In a private community, someone is killing retired police officers. Can Barnaby and Winter find the killer before he tracks chicken poop all over the carpet? We're talking a more serious episode.
The history of the Great Train Robbery.
And Barnaby getting super judgy in this episode of
Welcome to Midsomer.
Hello, and welcome to Midsomer, the podcast where we dissect all the mysteries, the murders, and the many weird things about the long-running hit TV show, Midsomer Murders. I'm your host, Eric Buscher, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Eileen Becker. Hey, Eileen.
Hey, Eric. We're talking Debt of Lies, the second episode of the 23rd series. It originally aired December 19th, 2022. It was directed by Gil Wilkinson and written by Nicholas Hicks Beach. Let's go to the fair.
Spoiler warning, we will be discussing the events of this episode, including the identity of the murderer. So if you haven't watched it yet and don't want to know who done it, pause this and go watch it. We will still be here when you get back.
He taught me the importance of wearing a self-tied bow tie.
And that's important?
Because now I can do this. Which I think puts me just the right side of louche.
I've always had a thing for that look.
Oh, lucky me.
Well, take me home and I'll show you how lucky.
Tom and Sarah Barnaby invited to the retirement event for DCS Eileen Bennett. And they don't really know her, but as the main detective in the murder capital of the UK, I guess you have to go to these things. Eileen works the room with her children, Lionel and Maddie, but her husband, Damien, is absent. Also present is retired policeman Sebastian Cabot and his wife, Ruth. Sebastian trained young Barnaby. Oop, there's that spin-off idea again. And thinks Eileen is a person that needs to be front and center at all times. Eileen and Damien will be the Cabot's new neighbors at Chalice Court, a fancy retirement community for ex-Bill. Bill means Popo. Now, the community is run by a charity that is super picky about who they let in, and apparently Elaine's getting in was a close call. Retired K-9 Unit Officer Giles Franklin argues with Eileen quietly, telling her that she has no idea of the damage she's done. She gives a speech saying she is looking forward to the next chapter of her life, not knowing the book is ending because she is found dead in a car accident the next day. Barnaby and Winter see no signs Eileen tried to slow down or make a turn before smashing into a tree, so they think it was intentional. But Fleur shows them a cut brake line, which means this is murder. Hence the title. They speak to the family, and her husband says she was already gone when he woke up, and he had no idea why she might leave that early. Damien is an alcoholic and admits he was passed out. They met when they were both divorced single parents on the job, and they adopted each other's children when they married. Maddie is Damien's daughter and is an accountant who seems to work freelance, including with the Chalice Court charity, and Lionel is Elaine's son and a landscape gardener. The two seemed happy over the years, but lately had been fighting more. When Damien decided he didn't want to go to the party, Lionel went in his stead and got home around midnight. Lionel went in his stead and says he got home around midnight. Also, her car's windscreen was smashed a few weeks ago, but Eileen didn't want it reported. Later on, Lionel tells his wife that they should go to the police over something, but Jenny is worried about a mysterious he who will hurt them and their baby Freya. Now, Fleur informs Barnaby that Eileen had something called Grodinger's disease, a genetic condition that slowly causes complete body paralysis and ultimately death. The condition can be passed down to their children, so family members need to know to get tested. They determine that the brakes were cut sometime between midnight and 5 a.m., which means that the killer either scaled the walls of this walled community in the middle of the night, or they were already living there, which would mean that our killer could be a retired police officer. The next day, developer Billy Bevan hosts a press conference at the development site next to Chalice Court. The site is full of toxic waste, but Bevan is using bioremediation to restore it. Both Lionel and Maddie are working for Bevan. Man, Maddie has a lot of jobs. Since Barnaby and Winter are present, Lionel tells him that he had Sam Engels working for him, but fired him when he learned he had hid being an ex-con. Now Engels is making threats and might have had a grudge against Eileen, as she is the one who told Lionel. Barnaby talks to Giles about his argument with Eileen. He says it was about her complaints against his cutie dog, Simba. Giles had retired on a disability pension after being hit by a car in the line of duty, moving to Chalice with his now-deceased wife. Currently, he works as an accountant for the Chalice charity. Say that 5 times fast. Barnaby then has a quick chat with Elaine's GP, who happens to be Ruth Cabot. And she tells him that Eileen moved to Chalice because it was safer for her with Grodinger's and Damien's drinking. She also tells him that Sebastian suffered a cerebral hemorrhage a while back and is recuperating by doing a charity walk with his walker in the backyard. Sebastian tells Barnaby that the board was more concerned with Damien than Elaine due to suspicions that he had been bent. He was suspected of stealing money from the Goldman Forbes job, an infamous robbery where criminals stole £5 million in broad daylight, then hid the money at a Badger's Drift farm. Damien was a young PC who saw something was up at the farm, so he and Sebastian investigated and found the money. However, when the money was turned in, there was $300,000 missing, and when the gang was apprehended, they denied spending it. So rumors started to spread that Damien took the money, but nothing was ever proven. Barbie meets the Cabot's son Charlie, who is autistic and also has OCD and is obsessed with classic car models Sebastian buys for him. He lives in special housing because he can be volatile, but comes often to play with his cars. Charlie is very concerned Barnaby is going to take him away for some reason. Winter talks to Ingalls, who says he wanted to go straight when he got out, but no one wanted to hire an ex-con, and desperation was pulling him back towards crime. So when the job opportunity with Lionel came up, he decided to not tell him. However, he has an alibi for the murder. He was at his usual pub having his 3 IPAs. Damien denies he stole the robbery money. He left the force because they were doing an anti-corruption push, and he had a history of bending, but not breaking the rules. Sounds like a couple Barnabys I know.
Seriously.
So he quit and started being a PI with Elaine's financial backing, since Elaine believed in his innocence. He wanted to be there for her with the Grodingers, since she hadn't really told many people. Later, Damien tells Lionel he's going to investigate the robbery to clear his name. That night at Chalice Court, a hooded figure breaks into an office and destroys all the records and the computer's hard drive. The next day, Barnaby finds in the mess a brand new chuck key to a power drill used on the hard drive. Turns out Sebastian paid for Elaine's smashed windscreen, and he says it was caused by Charlie, who was angry that Elaine accidentally broke one of his toys. Since Charlie was already under caution for something else, Elaine used this to blackmail Sebastian into voting for her to get into Chalice Court. Winter goes through all the files of the robbery. Turns out one member of the gang got away, a Brian Hurst. Maybe he is back looking for revenge. There are also missing files that Elaine had taken before she retired. Was she covering up Damien's involvement? Apparently there was footage of Damien's bike riding late the night of the murder while he was supposedly plastered. So they go to question him at his home, but only Lionel is there, who tells them that Damien is gone. Searching through Damien's desk, they find a file on Billy Bevan, a weird note with the words Cobra, Panther, and MSN on them, and info that he rented a lockup nearby. They head over there and find an incident room dedicated to the robbery with the missing files all over the walls, connected with string. They also find Damien dead, all over the wall, connected with string. Now, tourist info. This is our one and only visit to Chalice Court, a lovely retirement community for the fine retired police officers of Midsomer who only have the minimal amount of corruption charges. Chalice Court is located next to the future site of a pristine development, once the chicken poop does its job.
Standing in for Chalice Court is Harpsden Court, a lovely manor house in Oxfordshire. It was seen in Season 7's Ghosts of Christmas Past as Draycott Manor, so I like to think that the Villiers family turned it into a retirement home. So nice of them. Harpsden Court is privately owned, and though you can't get married there, you can follow them on Instagram.
We have a strange kill. Damien is murdered with blows to the head and then hung on the wall and wrapped in string. I just want to know, how is he up on that wall? They don't really explain it. Is it a hook? I can't believe that string is strong enough to hold him up. I mean, it's a lot of string, but come on.
It seemed very unlikely that string would have been that strong.
Yes. I will say that the scene where they are going into the lockup and using their flashlights in the darkened area, which also makes me wonder, were there actual lights in that lockup?
No.
Because otherwise, it's a terrible incident room. But
Yeah.
they made the lighting and cinematography just seemed so inspired by David Fincher and the movie Seven, especially when they find the killer's apartment and he's got stuff all over the place. It's not as weird and as grim as that, but definitely the use of the flashlights as a main lighting source really reminded me of the work of Fincher.
Yeah. It also reminded me of that meme where you see the guy with all the threads, red
You mean
conspiracy threads going everywhere. Yeah.
You're talking about the infamous scene from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
If you looked at that incident room, that wasn't useful at all. Like, there's strings that are going, like, I connect this, and then I go all the way back to, like, 7 feet. Like, move them closer.
It is one of the few times we do see an incident room.
Yes. Yes. So overall, I have to say this is a very good, very dense. As you can tell from the length of the first half,
Yeah.
there's a lot going on. It's a very serious episode.
Mm-hmm.
There's very little humor to it, and what humor there is so light and honestly really weak. It's not good jokes at all.
You can tell by the way Winter grimaces after he has to deliver one of them.
Yeah, but I mean, this is a definite darker episode for Midsummer. One, they don't normally do a lot of episodes where there's not a lot of laughs to it, or
Yeah.
even honestly, that murder seems so out of place in this episode.
Yeah.
I thought they did some great camera work in this one,
Mm-hmm.
especially that chase sequence at the end
Yeah.
where they are weaving in and out. There's a lot. It's clearly like I can't tell. I'm guessing it would be steady cam following them, but kind of weaving through traffic. That was really well done.
Yeah. Al Beach again doing some
Oh.
great job.
What did you think of the fair that we see later on? That was very sparsely attended.
It was a very small fair. I mean, I know that they tried to make it look bigger than it was, but they were still filming under COVID rules. They filmed this in April, May of 2022, and they do list a COVID manager in the final credits.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like it didn't feel like this is supposed to be a village fete. This is supposed to be like a county fair,
Yeah.
which is a much bigger to do. Usually has rides. I
Yeah.
don't know. In the US, they usually have rides. I don't know what they have in the UK.
Yeah. We did see some sheep, which is always good. But yeah, I know that they were trying to do the best they could with COVID, but it still felt a little
Weak.
sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't see a whole lot of people milling around. You only see Betty at the very end when I think they cleared everybody off the set and stuff. So, yeah.
Big theme about this episode is getting old.
Mm-hmm.
As described by Giles, it's a bit rubbish.
It is. It is. It's definitely rubbish. It's better than the alternative, but it's a bit rubbish.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, everyone in this pretty much here are like retired or,
Mm-hmm.
which also kind of limits who the killer could be. Because again, how the heck did they get that guy you need someone young and strong to get him up on that wall.
Yeah. Yeah. It did kind of limit to who it was. And you never suspect Maddie at all because they didn't really give her a whole lot of
Well, if you look
motive.
if you look at the physical strength that would be needed, there's only 2 people that could have been the killer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or, I'm sorry, three. I take it back. There's 3 people that could have been the killer. But yeah, I thought it was, they do spend a lot of, there's, Barnaby talks at one point about what his retirement might look like,
Mm-hmm.
Which I'm just assuming he just vanishes, much like the other Barnaby did.
Like Tom Barnaby did. And yeah, and they don't even give him a retirement in some on some showings on some of the channels that show it. He just disappears.
He's just like Richie Cunningham's brother. Just goes up the stairs and never comes back down. There's a deleted scene somewhere in Happy Days where it's just, his body, his skeleton's just living in his room somewhere.
Kind of like Bart's evil twin.
Yep. All right. So a lot of this episode centers around, because it's dealing with aging, it's centering around Chalice Court, which is a retirement community for ex-police officers. It is run by a charity of some kind who is, very picky about who they let in, which I kind of think for a retirement community that only lets in ex-police officers, I mean, that's already a pretty high standard.
Yeah.
The walls of Chalice Court were decorated with the police awards and memorabilia, which is interesting is because they kind of show that during the credits. And you don't think much about it, and then it plays a big part in finding the solution. I thought that was a nice subtle touch.
Yeah.
What did you think of this retirement community? How did you think it looked?
It looked very nice. It looked like people had like a very I mean, it was not just a room. They had like a little a more substantial living area.
Well, I couldn't quite figure out if this was like they all had their own individual houses or it was like there was a big manor, and like the manor was sort of like the clubhouse, and everyone else had their own little private areas. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
also, there's only 3 people living there, apparently.
You occasionally see another, old couple walk by every once in a while. It looks like to me, and I've seen that they're doing this with some old manor houses, is that they are, because a lot of them do have outbuildings that they're also making into, kind of separate homes, as well as dividing up the manor into these separate apartments
Yeah.
as well.
When you compare it to the other episode we watched that had a retirement community
Mm-hmm.
or retirement home, I thought this was much better because this one actually had light.
The curtains weren't always drawn.
We don't make these police sit in darkness.
They had a nice little sunroom there that they were able to sit in.
Yeah. They spent time discussing the Sebastian Cabot charity walk,
Mm-hmm.
which was clearly based on the charity walk of Captain Tom Moore.
Mm-hmm.
This made a lot of international headlines over the pandemic. He was a retired British Army officer who decided to, during the COVID pandemic, raise money for the NHS charities. It's NHS Charities Together. Now, he was 99 years old, and he decided he was going to walk 100 length of his gardens by the time of his 100th birthday, which was coming up. And the goal was to earn £1,000 for the charity. Because his thing became like a media cause celeb, whatever. But he ended up raising £30 million.
That's overachieving.
That's fantastic, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Certainly not a corrupt police officer. A lot of this episode centers around the idea of police corruption as well. I do kind of wonder if this was a little bit of a take on the subject since the mega hit Line of Duty show, which was like one of the BBC's top rated shows. But that's like a super intense thriller about corrupt police officers and the hunt for them, and pretty much a corrupt institution.
Yeah.
But it was like that was on around the same time as this episode. In fact, I think the last season of that I kind of finished up about a year or so before this episode had come on.
Yeah, it also revisits that subject, which was brought up in season 10's Death of a Chocolate Box, which we haven't done yet, so we will talk more about police corruption in that one as well. But it is a theme. Obviously, a lot of the police shows, the more serious ones, actually deal a lot with the idea of corruption in the police forces. Everything from Life on Mars to Prime Suspect to, these are all ones that are dealing with.
I mean, pretty much every major cop show will have a corrupt cop story at some point.
Mm-hmm.
This one I feel is like treats the subject a little lightly.
It does. And it is, because it is obviously a very serious subject. These are people that are entrusted with upholding law and order, supposedly, and yet they seem to have no problem, doing illegal search and seizures. Yeah. Tom, Barnaby.
They both do it. Yeah. But it's also, I think, in this episode, intentionally or unintentionally, they intermingle it with race, and it gets a little dicey. And we'll talk a little bit about that in the second half.
Yeah.
Chalice Court is right next door to a toxic field. Who built this? They never actually explained how this major field that, again, is right next to a retirement community where they stick aging ex-police officers. Is this the swamp? Does this swamp need to be drained?
Yeah, they never do explain why it was toxic or what caused it, what was there before, if it was just like, some kind of farm that was used toxic chemicals, or if it was some sort of an industrial site, which who knows.
They also never explain why Barnaby and Winter was at Billy Bevan's press conference. He was not a suspect at this point. They had no reason to be there.
They really didn't. But they had to get Billy Bevan in there earlier.
This is not the place where you talk to Lionel.
Yeah.
They are cleaning the field with bioremediation, which is a real thing.
Yeah.
It is defined as the use of either naturally occurring or deliberately introduced microorganisms or other forms of life that will then consume and break down environmental pollutants in order to clean up a polluted site. It is pretty common.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how often they use chicken poop.
I'm not sure either.
But I loved that as a great it's chicken poo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The whole thing that sets everything Spinning in Barnaby's head is chicken poo.
Yep. It made me really wish he had tasted it. We also talk. There's a lot in this episode about something called Grodinger's disease, which, as we said, causes a slow acting paralysis, as defined in the show. It is basically you start with losing your balance. Eventually, your body kind of locks up to the point where you can't even breathe.
Yeah,
which kills you. This disease apparently is not real.
Yeah.
It is similar to other conditions, Huntington's disease.
Yeah, I was more reminded of the of Huntington's disease, especially the genetic factor of it. Also, a bit of Parkinson's as well. With some of the symptoms. So it seemed like a very convenient kind of. I think maybe they wanted to use a disease that was horrible, but they didn't want to exploit a real disease because that might be kind of triggering for some people. Yeah.
I just figured there was probably someone who used to work on the show named Grodinger who they all hated. And here's your present, sir. They mention in this episode the infamous Great Train Robbery, so we thought it would be really fun for Eileen to just go nuts and do some true crime with their history of the Great Train Robbery.
You know I love my trains. Shortly after 3 a.m. on the 8th of August, 1963, a Royal Mail train traveling from Glasgow to London on the West Coast Main Line stopped at an unexpected red signal between Leighton Buzzard and Sheddington. A crew member climbed from the locomotive cab to call the signalman from a telephone beside the track. The line had been cut. As the train was stopped, members of two gangs working together, the Southwest Gang and the South Coast Raiders, entered the engine cabin from both sides. Driver Jack Mills was struck on the head from behind by a Kosh. The car behind the engine, called the HPV carriage for high-value packages, carried bags of money being transferred from Scotland to London, with more gathered along the way. Mail cars, with post office staff sorting mail, made up the rest of the train. The train was moved onto Bordego Bridge, about half a mile further along the track. The gangs had brought a train driver to move the train at that point, but he was unable to operate the engine, so they forced driver Jack Mills to move the train. At the bridge, the rest of the gang members entered the HPV carriage and began offloading the bags of cash. A couple of the postal employees attempted to stop them, receiving blows to the head in return, and no police or security officers were on the train. The robbers spent 15 to 20 minutes removing 128 sacks of money from the train along a human chain. 8 bags were left behind. 30 minutes after the train had been stopped, the gang departed in a large truck and 2 Land Rovers. The robbery had been planned over several months by gang leader Bruce Reynolds, with inside information provided by an insider known only as the Ulstermen. Other members of the gang who helped with planning were Gordon Goody, Charlie Wilson, and Buster Edwards. Since the Southwest Gang had no experience with train robbery, they joined forces with the South Coast Raiders, who were already accomplished train robbers. Other members were added as needed, for a total of 16. Reynolds 16, if you will. After the robbery, the gang traveled back roads to the Leather Slade Farm, 27 miles from the crime scene. 2 months earlier, the gang had purchased the farm for their hideout through accomplice Brian Fields, a solicitor's clerk. When they counted the money, it added up to over £2.6 million, about £70 million today, with each gang member getting approximately £150,000, with smaller amounts going to some associates of the gang. While listening to their police radio, they learned that police were searching within a 30-mile radius of the crime scene, which would include their hideout. Spooked, they decided to leave the next day rather than hide out for a few more days. New cars were procured and everyone drove off. They had cleaned up the house and had planned to burn it down, but the man that Brian Fields paid to torch the house did a runner. The police found the house on August 13th before the gang could return, and a few fingerprints had been missed on a ketchup bottle and a Monopoly game board, which some of the robbers had played with real money. Chief Superintendent Malcolm Futrell of the Buckinghamshire Police CID arrived at the Cheddington railway station around 5 in the morning. The train had been moved there after the robbery. By early afternoon the next day, Futrell called in Scotland Yard. After a couple days, Detective Chief Superintendent Tommy Butler was assigned to take over the case as the head of the Flying Squad, also known as the Robbery Squad. A 6-man train robbery squad was established. Roger Cordry, who had stopped the train, was the first arrested on August 14th, the day after the farm had been found by police. 10 more members were captured by the end of the year. Of the 11 robbers, and one poor guy caught with his friend Cordry, found guilty, almost all got sentenced to 20 to 30 years in prison. Most had been released by 1978. 2 other robbers were caught in 1966. Mastermind Bruce Reynolds was not captured until 1968. The vast majority of the money was never recovered. The robbery had already entered pop culture by 1965 when John Lennon taunted Scotland Yard about it in the movie Help. In the James Bond film Thunderball, Spectre got £250,000 as their share of the robbery. Elements of the robbery are also featured in the Agatha Christie Miss Marple novel At Bertram's Hotel. It was soon fictionalized, satirized, and dramatized many times. A board game called The Great Train Robbery was released in the early 1970s. In 1988, Phil Collins played the title character Buscher in a fictional take on the robbery. Andrew Lloyd Webber's train musical, Starlight Express, includes a villain who claims to have been involved in the robbery. In 2012, ITV released a documentary based on a book, The Great Train Robbery, the definitive account, while the following year BBC One aired a dramatization called The Great Train Robbery, starring Luke Evans and Jim Broadbent. The first part, which focused on the robbers, aired the day that one of them, Ronnie Briggs, died. The second part focused on the police investigation. Bruce Reynolds had died earlier that year. He lived long enough to witness the musical success of his son Nick's band A3, also known as the First Presbyterian Church of Elvis the Divine. In the U.S., A3 is most famous for writing the theme song to a popular HBO series, The Sopranos. The Great Train Robbery is also the name of a 1903 short film, a 1941 Western film, an episode of I Love Lucy, and a 1975 novel by Michael Crichton based on the Great Gold Robbery of 1855. It was later made into a 1978 film starring Sean Connery, Donald Sutherland, and Leslie Ann Down. In the UK, it is known as the first Great Train Robbery.
Very cool.
Yeah.
You have fun?
Yeah.
Did you have fun doing that one?
I did, and I did watch the first half of the Great Train Robbery fictionalized account.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's actually not too far off what really happened. Luke Evans, I thought was very good in that. Jim Broadbent, I didn't see the second half, so Jim Broadbent, I haven't seen a whole lot of his scenes yet.
Yeah. Okay. All right, let's do some cast highlights. Gary Beadle was alcoholic PI Damien Bennett. He's from South London, where as a child, he managed to get director Alan Parker's assistant to see a performance of Bugsy Malone, the all-child musical that Parker did as a movie. And that helped get Beadle into theater school. After spending time in 1980s New York City, he came back to London and started a rap group called the City Limits Crew, which actually released 2 singles that did pretty well in the UK. He's appeared in Absolute Beginners, The Young Ones, Grantchester, and In the Heart of the Sea. Most recently, he was in The Gentleman and A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. Jeff Francis was local businessman Billy Bevan. Francis made one of his first on-screen appearances in the classic The Singing Detective. He would go on to appear in the sitcom Desmond's and its spin-off Pork Pie, as well as Doctor Who, Ashes to Ashes, Holby City, The Aliens, and Star Wars 9, The Rise of Skywalker. And yes, you pronounce it like Jeff, but spell it without the O. Sabina Franklin played All About Her Elaine Bennett. She starred in the sitcom Full House, not the one you're thinking of, but a BBC show from the mid-'80s. She also appeared in an 80s adaptation of Pride and Prejudice, Keep It in the Family, Mixed Doubles, and Coronation Street. You could most recently see her playing a judge in EastEnders. Lauren McFadden played angry landscaper Lionel Bennett. He's a Scottish actor who has appeared in Vigil, Starstruck, Grantchester, Operation Mincemeat, and The Lazarus Project. He's also a musician who plays in the band Holy Fool. Peter Polycarpo was Dog Daddy Giles Franklin. He is best known for playing 2 characters with long, weird names. He's Chris Theopolopoulos, no way I'm saying that right, in Birds of a Feather, and Louis Charalambos in The Lost Honor of Christopher Jeffries. He was also in Evita, DeLovely, and Hustle, plus has done a ton of musical theater. You know what? He also plays cricket for fun. I guess it's fun? I don't know. Never looked fun to me. I'm going to get so much hate letter from England now. Diana Yakini was accountant Maddie Bennett. She's of British and Nigerian descent and has appeared in Heart of Stone, Medium, Lunchtime Heroes, and Lagos Cougars, which I really want to see. She's also in the film Dreamers, which is currently making the rounds on the festival circuit. Jules Robertson was car enthusiast Charlie Cabot. Yes, he is autistic, and he is actually the first known autistic pupil to study acting at Regent's University. He also has a semi-regular role as an autistic character on Holby City. Now, he's expressed in interviews interest in playing both a Bond villain, and he wants to be the first neurodivergent actor to ever play Hamlet on stage.
Cool.
Well, it's, again, first known neurodivergent
Yeah.
actor. Alex Walkinshaw played ex-con Sam Ankles. He made his first on-screen appearance on the show Grange Hill at the ripe old age of 12. He has long stretches acting on The Bill and Holby City, and he's currently a regular on EastEnders. He's also been very active on his Wikipedia page. You can tell because he's added fun details like, in between acting jobs in the 90s, he worked at a snooker hall in Barking. That's where he's from. Miriam Hack was always holding the baby Jenny Bennett. Seriously, I think she's holding a baby in every single shot. She's appeared in Flowers, Wurzel Gummidge, Henpocalypse, and Joy.
For our return visitor, we really only have one. Elizabeth Payne played chatty Dr. Ruth Cabot. We saw her in Talking to the Dead. This is a bit of a return for Elizabeth, who has not done a ton of acting on screen, so it's always interesting when 20% of their resume is Midsomer Murders. She also appeared in The World of Lee Evans, Donovan, and 50 Ways to Kill Your Lover. According to one website, she also has a mezzo-soprano singing voice and can tap dance.
And I forgot one return visitor to put down on here, as I believe this is the episode where our beloved mayor of Midsomer, Chris Wilson, actually makes a cameo as the mayor. I think he has a sash that says mayor. That's where we got the nickname from. I believe it is this episode where that happened. It didn't. He's not listed in any. It's not listed in any of the other stuff. But if I remember correctly, he is in this episode, and this is the mayor one.
Our village star this week is the great Tom Conti, who played retired DCI Sebastian Cabot. Conti is a Scottish actor, born in 1941 as the child of hairdressers. His father was Italian, hence the name, and he studied at the Royal Scottish Academy of Music and Drama. He started at the Dundee Repertory in 1959 in what would become a long career on stage, which included The Real Thing, The Devil's Disciple, Savages, and 12 Angry Men. In 1979, he performed in the play Whose Life Is It Anyway on both the West End and Broadway, and ended up winning the Olivier and Tony for Best Actor. On screen, he was in Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, Shirley Valentine, The Dark Knight Rises, Paddington 2, Oppenheimer, and Reuben, for which he received Oscar and BAFTA nominations. He's been married to Kara Wilson since 1967, and according to their daughter Nina, it's an open marriage. He also apparently has a genetic marker in common with Napoleon Bonaparte. Now, I was struck by the name Sebastian Cabot, having grown up watching him on that actor, the classic British actor Sebastian Cabot on Family Affair, and loving his voiceover work for Disney, especially in the Jungle Book and the Winnie the Pooh movies. And I wondered if Tom Conti had ever worked with him, and he hadn't, at least not on screen. So
Okay.
But I did find that as I was scrolling through Conti's resume, that he did work with John Nettles in the series A Family at War, which was an early role for John Nettles.
Huh. Yeah, I'm going to guess that soon as, once they named Tom Conti's character Sebastian Cabot, Google searches for the real Sebastian Cabot and Tom Conti is just going to be an impossible mess.
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break here, and then we'll be back with the second half of Debt of Lies.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you go to the paddock area, the display of sheepdog skills by Frank Bridgewater and his dog Bonzo has begun.
And we're back. Let's talk about the second half of Debt of Lies.
Those traces you wanted tested. We've got the results back.
And?
In amongst the soil and clay, we found evidence of chicken feces.
Chickens?
I'd say you're looking for someone who either works on a farm or rears poultry. That should make things easier.
Well, it really doesn't, but thanks.
Fleur says that Damien was killed by multiple blows to the head in the last 6 hours, and there are no defensive wounds or signs of a struggle or forced entry. So Damien most likely knew and felt safe with his killer. So check your friend groups, people. There's a note on him that says, payback. So maybe this is a message about what happens when you cross the killer? Barnaby surmises from all the crap on the walls that Damien was investigating who stole the money, and so maybe that means he didn't do it. He also finds some weird substance on the ground that turns out to be a combination of dirt, mud, and crap. Actually, it's chicken feces, otherwise known as the Colonel's blend of spices. Now, Maddie says that moving to Chalice and being surrounded by judgy cops made him obsessed with clearing his name. but it ended up putting a big strain on his marriage. Elaine was tired of investigating and just wanted to spend time with Freya. Damien had also been examining Sebastian's duty statement from the day the money was found, but it all seems pretty standard as it states that he was with his partner, PC Minogue. Unfortunately, Minogue has passed away from cancer, and they have no clue why Damien wanted it. Sebastian says to him, this all seems like Damien was just acting because he did the crime. Seems far-fetched, but okay. Barnaby and Winter go back to Giles because he was the one who bought the Chuck key and thus destroyed his own files. Turns out he had embezzled some money from the charity because his disability pension was reviewed, and they decided he had been paid enough. As he couldn't afford to live in the home he had shared with his wife, he stole the money with the hopes he could pay it back. But he never could, and when Maddie started asking to review the paperwork, he knew she would uncover his crime, so he destroyed all the evidence. Meanwhile, Engels threatens Jenny, demanding money that he is owed by Lionel. Jenny tells Lionel, who violently throws Engels up against a wall and threatens to hurt him if anything ever happens to his family. The detectives look into Bevan and find some suspected dodgy deals and no record of him before the 90s. Barnaby thinks it's his lucky day when he gets home and finds Bevan talking with Sarah, which is not usually how people would react, but that's okay. Sarah is the chair of the local country fair committee for the first time, and she needs a new location for it, and Bevan has a field she could use and is offering it to her. Not the toxic one. Just be clear. After he leaves, Barnaby grabs his water glass to dust for prints, which come back that he is really Brian Hurst. Bevan admits he was a part of the gang that pulled the Goldman Forbes robbery, but got cold feet the day of the robbery and didn't go with them. When the money went missing, the gang thought he had double-crossed them, so he ran for it, but he did not take the $300,000. After a while, he came back and changed his identity. He has no idea why Damien had been investigating him, and he was at home working when Damien was killed. Over at the fair, Sarah puts John to work while they wait for Winter to play the criminal in the stocks that people can throw wet sponges at. Fun?
Nah.
But Winter is late because he's investigating Engels' alibi, which turned out to have been a lie. Engels admits he was actually waiting outside Lionel's house the night of the murder to confront him, but when Lionel had not come home by 1 a.m., he just went home. Barnaby talks to Ruth, who tells him about how she told Lionel at the event that she was so happy he had Freya after having the Grodinger's test, which makes Barnaby want to speak to Lionel's GP. Winter goes to Giles Franklin because he turns out Elaine was the head of the new pension review board that took his benefits away. Giles says yes, he hated her, but he didn't kill her. The pension was already gone, so there would have been no point. While there, Winter also notices a photo of a police rugby team playing a tournament the day of the Goldman Forbes robbery. The team includes Minogue, which means he could not have been with Sebastian. Barnaby discovers a tent from a valuation company called MSM at the fair. Why is it there? Who knows? But also the tent has lots of photos of classic model cars worth lots of money and includes a 68th Panther base with a Cobra body, very similar to one Sebastian had. So now we get the first reveal. Sebastian is the one who took the money. He had already noticed the activity at the farm before Damien, and he investigated by himself. He found the money and took it with the justification that it would help him raise Charlie. He went back with Damien because it would help cover any forensic evidence he left behind. He says he didn't plan to frame Damien, but when police started questioning police activity, he was super okay with smearing a fellow officer and started the rumors that framed him. He used the money to buy model cars so he could hide it in plain sight. When he needed something, he would just sell one of the cars. He realized he made a mistake with the report, but no one noticed it until now. Barnaby allows him to finish the charity walk before arresting him. At the same time, Fleur tells Barnaby that the full autopsy reveals Elaine was already dead when she was in the car, killed by a blow to the head. Barnaby still can't quite crack it until Sarah mentions that bioremediation at Bevan's other field is using chicken feces to clean up the pollution. Everything now points to Lionel, so they try to grab him, but he runs, eventually brought down by Simba. Once they start questioning him, we get the second reveal. While Elaine told Ruth that she had told Lionel about the Grodingers and had been tested, she lied. She never did tell Lionel, which means she let him start a family without telling him about a fatal disease he could give his daughter. When Ruth revealed it at the party, he confronted her afterward, and she admitted she didn't tell him so they would not terminate the pregnancy because she really wanted a grandchild. In a rage, Lionel pushed her, causing her to fall backwards and hit her head on the table, killing her. He staged the accident to cover his tracks, but he knew that to further save himself, the killer would have to kill again. He chose Damien because he knew about the disease and never told him, and once he started investigating, it was only going to be a matter of time. Damien had taken him to the lockup to show him what he had uncovered, and Lionel killed him with a hammer. In the end, he still blames them both for their actions, which he claims led to his, even though he plans to get tested and will only tell his daughter when he thinks it's right. So the circle continues.
Yep.
Our killer this time, Lionel, whose motive is anger at Elaine and Damien for covering up the fatal Grodigger's disease. And I gotta say, he was real scary when he got mad.
Yeah, he plays, and a lot of people are not what they seem on the surface in this one. He seems very kind of nice and easygoing, the same way Sebastian does. While Damien comes across and Sam are played as very angry. So there's there's a lot playing with that in this one.
Barnaby describes it as a game of Russian roulette you didn't even know you were playing. And that Elaine's silence had put Lionel's daughter's life in danger. You know, Elaine is a real mixed bag character in this. She, you know, obviously loves Damien and all that stuff, but, you know, first when Lionel confronts her, she lies and says she just didn't want him to carry that burden. But then, you know, he pushes again, and the real truth comes out. She wanted a grandchild, and she was willing to risk it.
Yeah.
Which is kind of awful.
Again, that surface geniality that she has covers a very selfish person.
You know, she describes Freya as, she goes, she was mine too, which she's not. But it really, you know, kind of goes back to the line. We were set up with her character at the very beginning. She makes it all about her. She needs to be front and center. She needs to position herself front and center at all times. Even with the birth of her grandchild, it's about her. It's an interesting choice to always have the son murder the parents, and it's not about greed.
Yeah.
It's about revenge.
Yeah.
Which I thought was interesting. There's also a lot with Damien and his alcoholism.
Yeah.
In this, which I thought, you know, is interesting is like you don't see him kind of behaving in a lot of alcoholic ways, but you can really see in Lionel the effect of having the rage, that bottled up rage and anger. That is a common thing for the children of alcoholics.
And also the actor does a fantastic job of just physically encompassing like a body ravaged by alcoholism.
Yeah. Oh no, the acting is top notch in this, and I really I want to say, like, because Tom Conti is so good, I do think it leveled up everyone's acting in this.
Yeah,
everyone gives a really natural performance. There's no over the top, and it was really well done. Lionel's violent anger, his self justifications, his blaming other people, it felt really real. It didn't feel over the top. It felt very, you know, his sort of the son of an alcoholic behaving in a lot of ways, like the blame, the justification, the self-righteousness, the violence, the anger, all of it is just such classic child of it's classic addict behavior, and it's classic child of an addict behavior.
Yeah.
It's all learned. I will say that I felt the accusations of Damien stealing and had a lot of race to them.
Yeah. It seemed like they blamed the stereotypical bad cop who would be black rather than the upstanding jovial white guy cop.
Conti framed the black officer, or Sebastian framed the black officer and seemed to have no guilt about it whatsoever.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of excuses for the corruption. It's interesting. I want to just kind of jump real ahead a little bit and just say, like, I was kind of disturbed that Barnaby seemed to be kind of okay with the corruption and of Giles and Sebastian, the two older white cops.
Yeah.
And incredibly judgy towards Damien, whose crime seemed to be he bent the rules, which is what both Barnabys always did.
Yeah.
Right? There is a scene that, like, where Barnaby says, like, it drives me crazy, this cop who thinks they can be just a little bit bent and it's okay. There is just no self-awareness there at all.
No. And yeah, it's typical that people don't see their own corruption.
But it's not a good look because also he kind of feels very, very judgy towards Bevan.
Yeah.
Now, Bevan may have been a part of the gang,
Mhm.
right? But
Yeah.
he is guilty of nothing in this episode. In fact, he seems to be a guy trying to actually do the work of living a better, like, so he may have had some dodgy deals. There's no evidence of that. He didn't take
Mhm.
any of the money. He didn't commit the robbery. He's literally trying to clean up a toxic dump.
Yeah.
He is giving Sarah a field for this fair, just clearly out of just like generosity,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
With the information we have. And, you know, he is really judgy and he's really judgy to Bevan. So it's a bad look when you're this kind of judgy towards the two main black characters.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, the two white characters who actually committed crimes
Yeah.
is very much more like buddy.
Yeah.
Like letting Sebastian finish his charity walk or whatever, fine. But it does kind of overlook the fact that, you know, Sebastian not only, yeah, he took the money. Okay, he took the money, but he took it for his autistic child to help raise his child, right? He also framed a police officer and ruined that police officer's career.
Yeah. Yeah. And never acknowledged that that was his fault.
Yep. Franklin embezzled a lot of money to live in which, you know, to live in this Chalice Court, which again, I thought this was all funded by a charity. So how does that work?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and again, he's just like at the end, he's just again very buddy with Giles. Like Giles isn't in jail. He's admitted he's committed fraud. He should be in the jail. And he's, you know, he's not. It's weird. And I didn't quite like it. It's not typical Barnaby behavior. And I this is like, I don't know what I'm supposed to feel here, but this is not a good look.
Yeah.
That's all I gotta say about that.
But back to Lionel.
Back to Lionel. By the way, when there's a moment in the episode where he goes, she just wanted to spend time with Freya, her granddaughter. They like say that so completely. I'm like, that's a clue. Like they might have named Freya Clue.
Yeah. My question with Lionel and Sam and Jenny, I mean, Jenny was always very jumpy and nervous through this whole episode, is we learned that Lionel owes Sam money, but why? Is it the back wages? When he fired him, he just said, get out of here, I'm not going to pay you, and Sam wants his money, which he is actually legally entitled to for work he did? I mean, yeah, I'm on Sam with Sam on that. Yeah,
that's what I assumed, and that's it. Yeah, I mean, now Sam probably shouldn't go threatening Jenny.
No,
that seems a little bit of a jerk.
Oh no, Sam is a total jerk, but he is entitled to the wages that he earned. What's really interesting, though, for me is that if he hadn't cut the brake line, if Lionel had not cut the brake line, they would have assumed it was an accident. They probably wouldn't have delved a whole lot deeper.
Why did he cut the brake line?
Yeah.
Why did he? She was dead.
She was dead.
He didn't need to cut the brake line.
Yeah. All he needed to do was make it look like an accident rather than somebody tried to murder his mother.
Yeah. Like, if she's dead at the wheel and it just like if the car is just going straight anyways, she's dead. No one's braking.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't even thought about that. Why did they cut the brake line?
Yeah.
Makes no sense.
Yeah.
Lionel. Just really wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
What charity walk was Sebastian doing? Was that the Chalice Court charity?
I don't know. It never really says. It just says his last walk. Whether it's for autism awareness or, the NHS charities or something, who knows? Barnaby retirement fund.
Whatever this charity that runs the retirement, it's very confusing. I don't know if it's a charity. Why are they paying? Why does he need to steal money to live there? I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I thought he was very clever in calling him young Barnaby.
Yeah.
Playing that flattery.
Yeah, he flatters and plays up. And again, it's that geniality that he projects through this whole episode. Even when he's being arrested, you like this guy. You like this guy.
Tom Conti is a very likable actor.
Oh, yeah. And he's playing him as a very likable guy, but you see under that. Yeah, it's a great performance.
Again, the justification, the willingness to just frame another officer.
Yeah.
If he was really a good, like, that's the thing, is like, if he was really a good cop who's just decided to take this money reason, why frame another officer?
Yeah. Why start the easily they could have said, "Oh, no, we were both together the whole time." The robbers are lying. They must have spent the 300 grand. They're robbers. They're
Yeah.
they're not to be trusted. Yeah, he could have easily. So yeah. He was playing with people's lives. Yeah.
Well, they take this justification. Well, he bent the rules. So it was like, what did you do?
Yeah.
What did you do? The lack of the lack of the total justifications, self justifications in this episode, just mind boggling.
Yeah, and typical.
Yep. And you were kind of weirded. You kind of were wondering why he was still like in trouble because of statute of limitations, right?
Yeah. I did have to look up the because in the U.S., depending on the jurisdiction, depends on how long a crime was. You can kind of get away with it. There are certain things that do not, like murder and apparently sexual assault of minors, but there is no statute of limitation on criminal offenses in the UK.
And I just thought it was in Law and Order, if this is in the U.S., Jack McCoy would have been like, it's a continuing conspiracy, and that's what we're going to prosecute him on.
Yeah, they would have found some reason to do it, yeah.
What did you think of Charlie?
I thought it was great to see a character like that portrayed by an actual autistic person, because I thought he brought an authenticity to it that that was really refreshing.
Yeah,
he did a great job. I was just blown away by how well he acted. Yeah,
he loved his cars, and
I do want to see him do Hamlet.
I would love to see him do Hamlet. That's a great idea. I loved the beautiful red herring of like him, that very big concern of like Barnaby was coming to take him away. And I was like, oh, that's a good red herring. I wonder why.
Yeah.
Oh, tricky.
Yeah, and that echoes through the whole episode. Yeah.
Yep. I also thought the Kylie Minogue clue was a really great bit.
Because you're kind of laughing at it, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh wait, that was a series clue.
This show did a very good job of like planting all the clues fairly, I will say. You want to talk about the Goldman Forbes thing?
Yeah, well, first of all, the Goldman Forbes, immediately you know that there's money involved because it echoes Goldman Sachs and Forbes, with two very moneyed names. It's got to be a bank or some kind of investment firm or somewhere that's a lot of money is involved. They don't have to explain what it is. It's Goldman Forbes. There's money there. But I thought it was interesting that it took place around 30 years ago when John Barnaby was training in Corsten. I guess Cousin Tom would have been kind of a young police officer at that time too. This all would have taken around 1992 since this aired in 2022. Unlike the math in my head, everything is not just 10 years ago. It's actually 30 years ago. And it would have been about almost 30 years, 29 years from the time that the Great Train Robbery took place. Which, when you look at the map of where that happened, and because they intentionally chose a place that was late in the line, but not in London, and didn't have a whole lot of houses around because they wanted to get as much money as possible. It happened around Midsomer County, so I just thought that was kind of a fun way that they played with the whole idea of the Great Train Robbery through this.
I want to point out we had two fun dogs in this episode.
Yes.
Simba, who is a real cutie, helps save the day. And then a cameo from Dog Bonzo.
Yep.
And his sheep herding skills. No reason for that to be in the episode. It was just funny.
But do we see Patty at all?
No, we don't.
No. But we do have dogs, so that's good.
You only get one like dog with lines. Patty's an uncredited. Corner Fleur, very subdued Fleur in this episode. Didn't like it. I liked my wacky Fleur.
I thought it gave her kind of a bit of gravitas on this one, and she does have the cheeky line where she says, "I was in the area anyway."
Yeah. She's full of helpful info, and I liked that line where she says the payback note that's found on Damien's thing was a very kiss of the Spider Woman,
which is very Fleur. Yeah.
Yes. Look at the detective work. We talked a bit about the corruption. I will say, I just want to say that Dudgeon and Conti's scenes, fantastic.
Oh yeah.
Fantastic. And again, Conti, great actor. And when you work with a great actor, you really have to elevate your game. So I think we had a lot of great acting in this episode.
I do too. I think the young woman who played Maddie, the scene where she, after Damien is killed, and she's just like at a loss, and you get that. It's so really lovely scene.
I liked that Winter and Barnaby kind of put the pieces together on this one, but separately. Like they put it together separately and then came together. We get a bit more time in the police station than we usually see.
Yeah, a lot more. They are usually out and about, and we rarely ever see police station work. They are actually doing real police work in this one.
Yep. Winter has an explanation for the Miami sound machine, which is hysterical.
That was a funny bit.
An 80s musical combo out of the floor.
70s, yeah.
Rhythm's gonna get you.
Yep.
I like that he had his own brain fart.
Mm-hmm.
Which he never really gets to have.
No.
He gets his payment for having a brain fart is he gets to dress up like the criminal in the stocks and have wet sponges thrown at him.
Poor guy. And it was probably cold that day.
Yep.
But, I did like that Winter got to do some serious police work in this and did some serious investigating and figure things out.
Yep. I liked that Barnaby seemed really pleased with himself when he made the stocks.
Yeah.
And then Barnaby is trying to throw wet sponges at his underling, which again seems like a major HR violation, but what do I know? Can't do it until he gets his chicken poo brain fart, and then he nails him right in the face.
Yeah.
The police threw in the sponge. Such a terrible line.
That was terrible.
So terrible. It seemed so out of place in this episode.
And, yeah, Sarah called him Terry Leaf, who I assume is some sort of well-known criminal. I Googled him. I could not find anything.
No idea.
But, yeah.
No idea.
That is not a joke that translated to the American audience.
No. Let's do a little bit of the home life. We get to see Sarah, John, in real fancy get-ups.
Yep, very nice.
Sarah says you scrub up well, and then later on she propositions him.
Yeah.
Where he gets that amazing giggle face.
I did like their rapport at the party, especially when he's talking about the fact that he had turned down the promotion, which we had seen in the previous season. And she said that, she'd bring a date to his retirement party. I love that they have that kind of relationship. Yeah. It's just so nice and natural, and they play it off so well.
I liked the look on Sarah's face when Barnaby is just sitting there insulting Bevan, who is giving her a free spot for the fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, again, he doesn't care about her crap at all.
Yeah.
I like the idea that Sarah thinks she's going to get to run next year's fair. There were 2 major police arrests in one fair.
Hey.
It's not a selling point. And then, as you pointed out, we did see Betty a couple times this episode. Did you notice she didn't say one damn thing?
No, she does not. They did not give her any lines. Yeah. I think it was just kind of like, we want to make sure that we have Betty, because she was hardly seen the previous season because of the COVID rules. So they relaxed them a little bit. And so we get a few. So it's like, okay, we have to have a couple Betty scenes in here. Yeah. And she's grown. And you can see that their affection for her, for the actress.
And I think I also think this is like, well, if we give her lines, we got to pay her more.
Yeah.
And we ain't doing that. Budgets are shrinking on this show.
Yeah.
We got to pay Tom Conti. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Final thoughts.
Again, as we've said, I think this is just a really well done episode. It doesn't have the crazy memorable stuff that you usually get with Midsomer, but it's in a way it's a really good police procedural, which we don't normally get with Midsomer.
I think this. If I remember I remember watching this when it came out, and I also think this is the best one of its series.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever one was like right before this was like, I did not like it at all, and then this one was like, oh, this is a really good episode.
Yeah.
This is like, look, there's some questionable stuff in it.
Mm-hmm.
But the actual episode, it's solid. I'm not always a big fan of like more serious Midsomer, But
Mhm.
if you're going to put Tom Conti in it,
Mm-hmm.
it works.
Yeah.
And this one worked. I think this is definitely, I would rank this as one of the higher Dudgeon ones.
Mhm.
I just think he does I think his scenes with Conti just, you know, he gets to be a more normal, natural actor than he normally gets to do on the show. And
Yeah.
it just shows that how good an actor Dudgeon actually is.
Yeah. I think that's all we have to say. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's everything we wanted to talk about. If you had anything you wanted to discuss about Dead of Lies or Midsomer Murders, please feel free to email us at welcometomidsomer@gmail.com. If you want us to use the email in the show, just say so in your email. We're also Welcome to Midsomer on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads, and YouTube. Over on YouTube, we've been uploading all of our old episodes. Please follow us in all these places. And if you like what you hear, please consider subscribing to us or rating and reviewing us on iTunes. That helps people find us. Please turn on automatic downloads because that helps us with the algorithm. Tell all your friends about us because that's just a nice thing to do. We're going to be back soon with another episode, and we hope you will join us again as we take the road out of Midsomer. We want to thank you for listening and remind you that in Midsomer, keeping secrets from your kids can be murder.
And usually is.
Welcome to Midsomer is produced by Eric Buscher and Eileen Becker. All clips in this podcast are used in compliance with the U.S. Copyrights Act, various exemption for criticism and commentary. Our logo and podcast art was designed by Smeedrai. Our theme music is by the infamous Space.